Hello, in this presentation, we're going to make a correction to a check for billable items within QuickBooks Online. We will have a comprehensive QuickBooks Online course soon, if not available yet. We also have a comprehensive Excel course which complements the QuickBooks courses and a QuickBooks Pro desktop version course you can find at the link below. Here we are in the QuickBooks Online dashboard. We will be continuing with the Get Great Guitars problem. We're going to be correcting a check in order to add the billable option to it. If you've been following along with the problem, hopefully you've done this correctly and you don't have to make any correction. But I thought this would be a good point, another area where we can go through and see what would happen if we wanted to set something up. If we see something not connecting as it should, how can we troubleshoot that problem? Can we fix it retroactively? Should we fix it retroactively? Those are some of the more interesting kind of problems we have. So let's take a look at the type of problem we're looking at, and then we'll go through the solutions and what potential things we can do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try to create an invoice, and to do that I'm going to go to sales over here, and I'm going to go to the new invoice. You can also get to it by this drop down up top. We're going to say new invoice here, and this is just going to be a demonstration. We're not going to complete the invoice, but I'm going to put in Eric music. Now, as we create this invoice, we'll noting that we don't have any related purchase order or billable item that pops up saying, hey, we have some billable items for this individual. And I know we have some. We had a guitar that we purchased particularly for Eric Music. And the question is, why isn't it pulling up? We could go down here and put in the guitar and record it as is, but we'd rather have it be tied out to the purchase of the guitar and ultimately to the purchase order when we ordered the guitar. Because we will be dealing with inventory, we're not going to have a perfect method here, because what we're going to do is link an expense, and it's going to pull over the fact that we have this guitar purchased for this particular customer. However, it's going to pull over the cost rather than the sales price, and then we'll have to make a quick little adjustment for that. The on-ground version of QuickBooks really links these two together in a different way that works fairly nicely. We'll make any updates if we can here to see how those links will change. But this is a good little workaround to basically pull that information over to the invoice from the check that we write, and originally from the purchase order that we made for a particular guitar for a particular customer. So in order to do that, we're going to kind of troubleshoot this. I'm going to close this back out, and we're going to say yes, we want to leave that. And we're going to go and say, I know I had a purchase order. So we can take a look at the purchase orders. I can scroll up top, select the plus item down here, and then we could go to the purchase orders, which is part of the vendor's purchase order right here, and select the purchase order and try to recap and say, is there a purchase order that we have for this individual? If we select this little timing icon, we can see some of the recent purchase orders. And we had a purchase order from Epiphone here. So if we select that, I believe that's the one, and scroll down, we did label a customer. So we had a customer labeled here when we had the purchase order. So the purchase order is what we did when we first ordered the product, and then they're going to sell it, they're going to send it to us. There's no journal entry related to the purchase order, but we did tier that mark off that we want Eric Music to be something that's going to carry through that whole process, through the purchase order, through the billing, through the check. So the next thing that happened is we got a check. So if we wanted to look at that, we received the guitar and we wrote a check for it at the point in time that we received the guitar. So I'm going to close this, and in order to see that, sometimes it's good to go to the report and drill backwards from there. So we'll go to reports, and I'm going to go to the balance sheet, and see what we have on the balance sheet. And what we're going to say the dates are 01/01/212, 01/31/21, and then we'll run that report. This is the month that we will be working on, January 1st, 2021, January 31st, 2021. We'll run that report. Then we're going to look at the inventory, because we purchased an inventory item. So we'll look at inventory. It would not show up in inventory until we actually pay for it, because that's when we received the inventory. So we have the inventory item here, and it's this 400 for the Epiphone. So if we select that item, then we can see the check that was written. Here's the check that we wrote to Epiphone, our vendor, we could see it's linked up to that particular purchase order. And if we scroll down, then we see the item here. What we want to add is this billable section here. This is what's not linking through, this billable section. If we don't have this set up, we can go to a prior presentation where we set up the billable items in the settings. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click this off. We're going to say check that, and we're going to add the sales tax to it. And now once again, note that this won't be perfect because it's going to pull over at this rate rather than at the sales price for this. This is what we bought it for, not what we sell it for. So we're going to have to do a workaround for that, but this will tie it out. If it was anything other than inventory and we just wanted to pull over the cost, we can then use this to pull over the cost and have that cost included or billable, something we charge to our customer when we create the invoice. And then we're just going to say save and new and save that. We're going to save those changes. And then let's just go and see if we did indeed make the changes that we need. We're not going to actually record the invoice right now. We just want to see if the invoice will populate. So we're going to go back to the sales tab on the left-hand side. And we're going to go to create an invoice. And then we're going to select the Eric Music again. And here's Eric Music. And when we select tab, then it's going to say, hey, you've got this billable item for the 400. That's what we expect to see. That's what we want to have happen. Note that once we select that item, it will show up at the $400. Now, if this was for just something that we wanted to add at cost other than inventory, that would be fine. The workaround, if it's inventory, then we got to figure out, well, what's the sales price? And we'll see this later once we enter the invoice fully. But to do that, one way we can do it is we could just type in ELP again, and then it'll pull up the sales price. So there's the sales price. So I want this one to be linked. So I would select this one, put the 500 there so it links out, and then just close this one out. So that's kind of a workaround so we can link up the inventory. This method works great if we just want to pull over the cost. If we're trying to link in the inventory, we got to put in a bit of a workaround. If there's any adjustments to that later, we'll let you know, but this is what we have at that point just to put that in place. If we weren't to do that, then of course we can just type in the ELP, but we wouldn't have it auto-populate as it does here. So this is one of those areas, once again, where we could go back and we can kind of make a change to something that happened in the past, often something that we want to be very, very careful of, because if we change numbers and they're linked to other things, it can change other things, and it could change our financial statements if we go into especially prior time periods. But in this case, it might be a good option to have. QuickBooks generally has a lot of flexibility in going back and changing things, which could be good and bad or bad. So let's do the same thing. There's another check here. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to record the invoice here, but I'm going to go back to reports and we'll do that one more time. We're going to go to reports. We're going to go to the balance sheet and we're going to choose the balance sheet here. We're going to change those dates once again from 01/01/21 to 01/31 to 01/31/21. 01/01/21. So let's run that report from January 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2021. We're going to scroll back down. We got the inventory item. We're going to select that inventory item. And then we're going to find the other check that we wrote. We wrote this check as well. I'm going to select that item. And we want to do the same thing. We wrote this check. If we scroll down, here's the check. It's Gibson check. And that's our vendor, and we want to make sure it is billable. It's checked off here, so this one's actually checked off. If it wasn't checked off, we'd select the check. Want to make it billable. It should also be taxable because we will have sales tax on it. And then we're going to say there it is and save and new for that one. And so those are the changes. Now when we make the invoice, those should tie out and pop up as we go. So if you've been following along with us, you hopefully don't have to make that change, but if you haven't, or if you're in some other circumstance where you want to see why that's linking out, then you can go through and make those adjustments and tie out your invoice to the billable items, the expenses.